Next, in bathrooms, we're going to be looking at sinks and vanities. So this drawing here with a lot of numbers here is uh, is an accessible sink and counter for that according to ADA. So this is, in a public restroom, this is what's required for a accessible sink or counter. Now, you don't have to memorize all these numbers. You can use them as guidelines, but again, you don't really have to do it. But let me show you what the reasoning is with all of these. So if a wheelchair were to roll up to this sink here, this 9 inches right here is clear so that the toes of the wheelchair can has enough space to get underneath. Obviously, you have this open space right here that is at least 27 inches to the bottom of the counter, but then the top of the counter also can be only 34 inches maximum. The depth here is at least 8 inches, and then at least 11 inches um, to the actual back. So this is kind of like a little angle piece. So at the top, the narrowest part, at least 8 inches, and then further down, at least 11 inches. So um, and then the width would also want to be at least 30 inches minimum. So that is the features for having an accessible or a wheelchair accessible counter. Now a roll under sink like this or counter is not just for people that use wheelchairs. It can also be very helpful for someone who can stand, but they can't stand for long periods of time, or it's just much easier for them to sit down. So in this case, they could pull up a chair and say they're brushing their teeth or just getting ready in the morning. This a roll under will be very nice because they can pull up a chair and sit down at the sink instead of having to stand up. So here are a few examples are of roll under sinks and vanities. I'm not gonna show you just for the luxury, the cool design value, but I'm gonna point out some things that are important too. Um, so this one here, as you can see, it has a little bit of a raised sink, kind of a vessel sink coming up. Now you want to be careful with the choosing your vessel sink if you are going to have that, because you don't want to have them too high, because then if somebody's sitting down, it's going to be hard for them to um, access the faucet or kind of get into the bowl, because then it reach up and over the sides. So if you are going to get a sink that comes up above the counter or get a vessel sink, make sure it's not too high up. Next thing here is another one. Here you can see got the nice little angle area here to roll under, and another vessel sink. Again, this one is nice and low, has a nice low profile, so it's not shouldn't be an issue, being able to use a sink since it's not too high up off the countertop. Here is another one that has a lot of nice features in it. So first of all, you can see down here along the plumbing lines, there's a cover over it, and you'll see that a lot in public restrooms too. The reason those plumbing and water lines are covered is to prevent hot water scalding. So if the hot water is coming in and it's piping hot, and somebody who maybe is using a wheelchair doesn't have feeling in their legs, and their legs are up against those hot water lines, and they get a scald or a burn, they may not know it, but it can happen. So that's what those covers are meant for, is to protect scalding or burning of the legs. So you got a nice open area for a wheelchair to roll up underneath here. And another nice feature I'm going to point out is this mirror. So you can notice that it's at an angle. It's kind of tilted forward. So that way a person who's sitting down can actually see themselves in the mirror much easier. The other option is to, if your mirror is going to be flush up against the wall, is to have it lower, closer to the countertop, so then that way the person can see themselves as well. But this mirror at an angle actually works really well, and just makes things a lot easier, so somebody can again see themselves in the mirror. So, reviews and recommendations for sinks and vanities. Open space below a sink or a counter allows for a person to sit up to a counter, sink or counter comfortably. And again, that's either for somebody who's using a wheelchair or just wants to sit and uses a regular, like a kitchen chair or office chair. Um, Open space below the counter should be at least 27 inches in height. And again, the maximum recommended should be 34 inches in height maximum. Be sure the open space is at least 11 inches deep. Cover the water lines with insulation. Again, that's to prevent burns. Uh, uh, for faucets, lever handles are recommended over like the knob kind. That's especially important for people who maybe have difficulty using their hands. Maybe they have some like rheumatoid arthritis or some joint pain, so they're not able to use those knobs as well. But a lever faucet will be something they can operate without having to grip their hands. Be sure switches and outlets and other items that might be needed are accessible from a sitting position. Again, with the mirror, like I talked about in that last example, lower the mirror down. That's so that somebody who's sitting down can see themselves, or tilt it forward slightly so then again they can see themselves from a seated position. And again, vessel sinks can be too tall in some cases. So just be sure that if you are going to use and if it's going to be used by somebody in a seated position, that vessel sink is not going to be too tall for them to use.